So I checked out this debate last night entitled, what was the title? Evolution on Trial or something like that. On the left hand side, you got Jen and T Rock, skeptics of evolution. And that's all that's relevant, right? That's all that matters here. Yes, T Rock is a creationist, and Jen said vehemently that she is not, right? She seemed like a secular scientific type to me. But it's irrelevant, right? None of that has anything to do with this debate. So, two skeptics of evolution on the left and two pro evolution guys on the right, T Jump and Ember, even though it was really just T Jump, but it is what it is. And the discussion was very heady, at least for me, insofar as a lot of the science or pseudoscience, if you will, of evolution is concerned. It's not something that I studied, so I can't say that I understood a whole bunch of it, but I still was able to grasp some of the ideas presented here and some of the problems that the evolutionists were faced with, and I have to say, were completely unable or unwilling to deal with. So, in summation, before we get into some of the details, it was another major fail for the evolutionists, but not if you read the comments, right? You have a ton of comments from obviously people who love science, are super logical and reasonable, saying, evolution is true. And I'm paraphrasing some of them. I mean, that's a direct quote. Evolution is true because science, right? No one in the comment section, at least insofar as I could tell, could make an argument for evolution. Like, and it always, I find it very telling because if you cannot make an argument for something that you believe in, right, then what is it that convinced you of the truth of the theory of evolution, right? I would think, right, if I believe something, it's because I heard convincing arguments that I could repeat back to you, right? But these people can't. It's disturbing to say the least, and well, very telling. But anyway, I'm just gonna address a few points here. I recommend watching, listening to the debate. It was entertaining, and I'm gonna have to listen to it a few more times probably because you know it was heady and hard to understand a lot of the stuff they were talking about. But anyway, uh, I guess the context of what I'm about to critique here isn't all that important, right? You could go watch the debate to fully understand the context, and I might not be qualified or might not remember exactly what it was, so let me not misrepresent anything that's going on. However, in one instance, T Jump did that very cliche atheist thing where they talk about, non-human human beings or the spaghetti monster, or in this case, uh, magical leprechauns that farted out the universe or something along those lines, right? So he posited this quote unquote hypothetical and tried to use that, right? Whatever the context is, again, it's not that important, but try to use that to, or precisely what the context is, to try to explain, right? He used that as a model that explains the world, right? That explains everything about the world. Magical fucking leprechauns that farted out the universe, right? That explains everything. That's according to T Jump, right? Does he actually believe this? Well, no. It's his quote unquote funny way of ridiculing theists, right? Of which I think of these two, I think only T-Rock was that. Anyway, it's unimportant, right? But it's this, straw man, because I have never heard a theist in any debate posit anything analogous to farting leprechauns as an explanation for the universe, right? That's never happened. So it's a straw man. It's disrespectful, definitely, and it's mocking of religion And I think obviously T Jump does that deliberately, right? So on the one hand, while he is mocking his opposition with this example, he's also somehow at the same time using that as a valid model to explain the world. So what are you saying, right? First of all, you're misrepresenting the other side, and that's not even the side you're battling here. So it was a complete non sequitur, I thought. But if we accept that even your analogy your model for the world is even the least bit analogous to the way, let's say, Christianity explains the world, well, I mean, you don't agree with that model, so why are you using it, right? It doesn't make any sense. There seems to be a contradiction there, right? You don't seem to agree with this, and you're strawmanning the Christian paradigm anyway. So it's bullshit. And as Jen pointed out, right, your model violates the laws of thermodynamics, meaning it's impossible. It's not even hypothetical. It's just downright impossible, right? So how are you on this one hand proclaiming to be super scientific and not a science denier definitely, and ridicule the other side, right? And yet you use the same types of arguments that you think that they're using, even though they're not, right? But like you're showing inability to comprehend what the other side is saying, has said in many debates, and you ridicule that, and yet at the same time you posit something even. Well, I'm not saying the Christian paradigm is ridiculous, but in your head, right, something even more ridiculous than that, and that's somehow supposed to legitimately explain everything that's going on in the world, even though it's pseudoscientific because it violates the laws of thermodynamics. So where is this super scientific T jump guy all of a sudden? Where did he go? Right? So you're fucking incoherent. And on top of that, you don't actually believe that these leprechauns exist. So it's intellectually dishonest. It's you're arguing in bad faith. You don't believe this shit exists because for whatever reason, maybe not the law of thermodynamics, maybe that didn't come to mind, but for whatever reason, you don't think that this is possible. You think it's ridiculous. And yet, you try to push this idea that this explains everything in our known universe. Right? But if a Christian says something like that, right? But only in your head once again, right? I'm not saying Christians actually say this. That's somehow invalid. So you're completely incoherent, pseudoscientific, and you're arguing in bad faith. And you have all these clowns in the comment section saying that was like a legitimate argument, just as, once again, Ask Yourself said to me in a debate with him, right? Imagine a non-human human being, right? The guy that always says P is and P is not is a contradiction, right? When it's convenient, well, he goes there, right? While at the same time saying that that's wrong. But that's it. This cannot be a coincidence, in my opinion, if I could editorialize a little bit, because you oftentimes hear atheists saying the absolutely ridiculous, self-refuting, incoherent shit all the time, right? Well, why do they do this, right? Is it because is that just a reflection of the worldview? Would that be fair to assume, right? I think it is. It must be. Also, let me try to remember what else went on in this debate. Oh, right. One of the sticking points in the debate, when asked to, you know, prove that evolution is true, T. Jump said, "Well, it's because we've been able to predict evolution or something along those lines." And this prediction was that some evolutionary biologist or somebody said that, based on these fossils we have that we found and dated to be, yeah, so and so old, right? We're going to be able to one day fill the gap between these two various fossils by finding an intermediate fossil, right? So a life form that is halfway or some way between these two different life forms. And the chronology will be correct and the morphology as presented by the evolutionary paradigm, everything's going to be aligned, right? We will, quote unquote, see this life form evolving, right? That this will be proof of evolution. Now, when he used the term predict, right, he got called out on it because it wasn't a prediction or saying before, right? Before diction, saying it was a post diction, right? Insofar, now, yes, he, some scientists out there were able to predict that they might find a fossil such as this one. That is true, but that's not predicting evolution, right? To predict evolution, you would have to say this or that animal in this or that environment because of the pressures exerted by the environment and whatever else it is, right? I'm no evolutionary scientist. Whatever the theory posits, right? You'd have to take the theory, apply it to a current life form in a certain environment, and based on all the factors that this animal is, or this group of animals are experiencing, and the forces, pressures exerted on it by its environment, you should be able to reasonably predict morphological changes in this animal or group of animals and say that this, and I think you should be able to give some kind of a rough timeline, yada, yada, yada. And then once we're able to observe something like that happening, right? Or you could give us an algorithm with a few different options, right? If this, then that, or if that, then this, right? And give us a few different. And if the animal follows one of these paths, I think then you will have an argument for evolution. Now, insofar as speciation goes, I think you need a lot more, right? You need a whole new species creation, but that would be using the evolutionary model to predict evolution, right? And then that's the relevant prediction here. Predicting what we may find in the fossil record that is also interpreted by assuming the evolutionary paradigm is not only not a prediction, not a relevant prediction insofar as observing evolution, right? But it's also circular reasoning, right? So, say you find this fossil and you call it an intermediate fossil because of the Earth's strata that it was found, and it was found in between these other fossils that look like, you know, an earlier form and then a later form, and it fits neatly into this preconceived notion you have of evolution. Well, fair enough. But if you're using this as evidence for evolution, you cannot assume evolution, right? To prove evolution. You cannot say evolution, because that's circular, and that's the circularity that these guys are engaging in, right? So, how do you know that these fossilized bones of this animal are related to the previous fossil you have and the later fossil that you found, right? Like, not to mention there's a whole host of problems with carbon dating or whatever like there's a whole bunch of problems. There's so many different holes you could poke in this, right? As I've heard many people in the past do, even though I myself might not be knowledgeable enough to repeat or explain these objections. I've heard them out there, but the point I'm trying to make, why this is circular, is because, well, how are you going to relate these fossils to one another? How do you know that these are related? Where is your proof, right, that this first fossil, let's say, when it comes to the chronology that you found, that animal there, right, bred and spawned all these other animals, on and on and on and on and on and on and on, and somewhere way, way, way down the line, right, one of those animals left fossilized into this intermediate fossil, which then that animal, right, before fossilizing, obviously, spawned other animals that eventually resulted in the third fossil, right? Like, how do you know that all these animals were related, right? How do you know that they're in the same family tree? How do you know this, right? Well, you don't. What you do is you collect the genetic material, or you study, the whatever genes are left in those fossils, which is again very problematic, and there are lots and lots and lots of problems with that on a very technical level. But you take this genetic information and you say, right, well, these are related because they have similar genetics, right? Yeah, but that's one of the assumptions of the evolutionary theory, right? No, 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 no. You can't use the evolutionary theory to prove the evolutionary theory because that's circular, right? That's completely and utterly illogical. But this is the box that these guys put themselves in, and they cannot think outside of this box. To them, it's just like evolution is fact, right? It's truth. So their assumptions, everything they see, right, is going to be interpreted through the lens of evolution. No, 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 no. You have to prove evolution by means other than evolution, right? You can't say, well, these are related because evolution tells me so, because the theory of evolution says that they are related because of, similarity in genes, right? Like, okay, yeah, we could look at families and see genetic similarities between, mother, father, and their offspring, yada, 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 right? Yeah, okay, fair enough. But we also see genetic similarities between humans and bananas, right? So what? Right? You have to show me that bananas evolved or we have a common ancestor or what. You have to actually show this, right? That this is at the very least show that something like that is possible, and that's never been done. It's just assumed that like because things have similar genetics that means that they're somehow related. Well, what is that based on though, right? Well, that's the theory of evolution. So you're using the theory of evolution to prove evolution, and that's completely fallacious. It's a joke, right? And you cannot predict the past, right? When it comes to predicting evolution, right? Not predicting that you're gonna find something and a guy using the theory of evolution is gonna engage in circular reasoning to say that this fossil fits the preconceived notions that he has of these fossils based in the theory of evolution, thereby proving evolution. That's not a prediction insofar as evolution. You just predicted that a guy would find something like this and he would fit it neatly into his little evolutionary family tree, if you will, because of all the preconceived notions of evolution that he already possesses. Whoop-de-doo! Well, what an amazing fucking prediction, right? That people who look at the world through the lens of evolution are gonna find evolution everywhere they look. Wow! Amazing prediction. No, 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 no. That's not how you predict evolution. You're predicting that some motherfucker will have circular reasoning and try to use that to quote unquote prove evolution. That's not a prediction insofar as the evolutionary theory is concerned. You have to be able to predict, right, as stated earlier in the video, the evolutionary changes that are about to happen in these various organisms because of the pressures exerted on them by their environment. Okay? You cannot predict the past because essentially that's what you're doing, right? And this is another point of incoherence when it comes to these evolutionists, right? They think that they can predict the past. That is what, I don't think they realize that that's what they're saying, but that is what they're saying, right? So, likewise, and T Jump said this in a video, right? He said that in order to prove that the Bible is true, right, some of the predictions made in the Bible would have to come true, right? Now, there are things in the described in the Bible that we had no knowledge of in the modern day that we later discovered that fit neatly, or it could be posited that maybe fit neatly into the story of the Bible, like Noah's Ark. There was some ancient city that was referenced in the Bible that they found, yada, yada, things of that nature, right? But obviously, he would just offhand reject that. But then there's another thing in the Bible where it predicted the mark of the beast, right? That you won't be able to engage in commerce unless you take the mark of the beast, right? And a lot of people have said, well, that's the vaccine passport, right? Couldn't you reasonably say that, well, the Bible predicted this, thus the Bible must be true, right? And this is what T Jump is doing, right? Because you look at the world through the lens of the Bible, you look for things in the world that correspond with the Bible. Now, it could also be that the people that wrote the Bible had planned this mark of the beast for a very, very long time, and the Bible is just brainwashing to get the people to accept or to not accept the mark of the beast, or someone who was good, let's say, and had foreknowledge of what these bad people were going to do to us, and he was just warning people of it happening. Or you could also say that, um, you know, the people who invented vaccine passports got the idea from the Bible, right? Because that's their religious tradition, that's where they come from. And they thought, oh, it fits neatly into this, and a lot of people will, maybe they'll respond to it however we want them to respond to it, right? And then the people that aren't, and maybe they wanted to, because they have some kind of an affinity for religious people, maybe they wanted to them to know not to take the jabby, and the people they have complete disdain and contempt for, like non-religious people, well, maybe they wanted them to participate, right, in the system. So there's a variety of ways you could interpret that, but if we are to take um, T Jump's, prediction confirms your hypothesis theory, right? And his very, very liberal interpretation of this theory, because I do believe that if you make predictions and they come true, right, then there's something to that, right? But if we are to take that, right, as valid, he has to say the Bible is true, right? He has to say that because it predicted the mark of the beast, and well, the vaccine passports are here, and they're gonna bring them back, right? Or maybe whatever, like it's there. The Bible predicted this. There it is, right? But would he accept that? No, he'll find a way to wiggle out. Some of which I presented here, or he'll just say, well, that's circular reasoning because you're using um, the theories posted in the Bible, written in the Bible, and adapting them to. That's the lens through which you're looking at the world. Thus, you find the manifestation of these beliefs in the world, and you could take this mark of the beast and apply it perhaps to other phenomena, and that doesn't necessarily mean yada yada yada, right? It's not exactly the same thing, but it's kind of along those lines. So if these quote unquote predictions that um, T Jump is making, but this is actually happening in real time, you know what I mean? So if anything, he really would have to believe in that the Bible is true, right? If indeed he believes that his quote unquote predictions, even though they're post-dictions, insofar as evolution itself is concerned, and proving of evolution, even though that these aren't predictions, he's speaking after the fact, right? And using circular reasoning to do so. But if he thinks that that's valid, then he has to believe that the Bible is true, but he doesn't, right? Because these motherfuckers are incoherent. They're intellectually dishonest, and this is the worldview of atheism, right? And so much as they argue that it's not a worldview, then why do all of you atheists, when you get in these debates, you commit the same fallacies all the damn time. You say the same dumb shit all the damn time. You're always contradicting yourself, right? And then you say that these ways, models of you strawman everybody, right? And you say that that's not the correct way to look at the world, and then you do it yourself, right? You make moves that you say are invalid for other people, right? Like what makes you so special, right? It doesn't make any sense, but that's the atheistic worldview. It doesn't make any sense. That's all I gotta say. It was an interesting debate. I'll listen to it again, but yeah. Oh, also there was, and I'm not qualified enough, not well learned enough to respond to this, but I thought it was the example that Jen gave when it came to bacteria and antibiotic resistance. To me, at least, to a layperson, seemed to completely debunk evolution or some of the evolutionary theory, right? And, well, with some of it, all of it goes, I guess, right? Um, but it was kind of dismissed, and the only kind of response that I heard to that was no, no. I mean, okay. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. Thanks for watching. Oh, the atheist got stomped in this debate because in closing, because they were incoherent. They contradicted themselves. Just T jump, really. The other guy didn't talk much. They used circular reasoning, right? They try to use evolutionary theory to prove their evolutionary theory. And they debated in bad faith, while at the same time saying that you can't make the moves that I make, right? So it was a major loss for the evolutionists and the skeptics. If people were honest and um, willing to try to understand what's being said and open-minded enough, you know, well, I guess we'd live in a much better world than we do right now. That's all I gotta say for real this time. Bye bye.